My name is William Carter. I'm 71 years old, and if there's one thing I've learned over all these years, it's that the earth can bury bodies, but it never buries memories. I live today in the Maple Ridge neighborhood, in the city of Cedar Falls, Iowa, in a simple little place with a small backyard where I grow some herbs. I retired almost 6 years ago, after 4 decades working as a gravedigger at the Cedar Falls Municipal Cemetery, a place I know better than the back of my own hand. Every path, every crooked cross, every shadow hiding behind a mausoleum, all was part of my life longer than my own home. Before becoming a gravedigger, I was just a skinny kid working as a bricklayer's helper. Life pushed me into the cemetery after my father died suddenly, leaving debt, grief, and a void that felt endless. I took the first job that came my way. It wasn't what I dreamed of, but it was what I had. And without noticing, the cemetery became part of my body, like a second skeleton. I learned to dig graves under rain, sun, and strong wind. I buried people I'd known since childhood. People I had never seen before, people loved and people hated. I buried victims of fights, diseases, accidents. And I buried people so remarkable that even the silence felt different when the coffin went down. But nothing, absolutely nothing, marked me as deeply as the burial of a woman named Margaret Holloway. I could summarize it by saying it was the strangest day of my life, but that would be diminishing what happened. Her burial wasn't just another job. It was the beginning of something that changed my body, my mind, and even the way I breathed. To this day, when I close my eyes, I can smell that day. The humidity clinging to the skin, the wind dragging dead leaves, the sensation that the air weighed inside my lungs. Margaret Holloway, even dead, seemed to demand both respect and fear. And anyone who lived in Cedar Falls at the time knows exactly what I'm talking about. Margaret was known throughout the entire town, and not for good reasons. She lived in an old wooden house by the edge of the Cedar River, in an isolated area where almost no one walked after sunset. She lived alone, always in a long dress, always walking slowly, as if time moved differently when she was around. Anyone who grew up here remembers the stories. They said she did work, messed with things she shouldn't, had packed with entities no one dared name. I never knew how much was truth and how much was just gossip. But there's one thing I learned as a gravedigger. In a small town, when everyone fears the same person, there's something there, even if no one can explain it. Fear doesn't come out of nowhere. When Margaret died, alone, just as she lived, the news crossed the city like a heavy cloud. I remember the day. November 29th, 1998. I woke up before sunrise, as always, drank my weak black coffee, put on my worn-out hat, and headed to the cemetery. The sky was heavy, the kind that looks like it'll collapse at any moment. Low clouds, unmoving wind, dense air. That day, even sound seemed trapped, breathing too slowly. When I reached the gate, the watchman came running. "William, today is Margaret's burial." He spoke quietly, almost whispering, as if her name could summon something unwanted. I didn't reply. I just grabbed my tools and went to the corner of the grounds where the grave would be dug. There, on the left side of the cemetery, the trees were taller and the shadows stronger. As I dug, an uncomfortable feeling grew inside me. It wasn't fatigue. It was a deep restlessness, as if the earth was shifting differently, as if every shovel of dirt had extra weight. I remember the sound of this day, a hollow, muffled sound, unlike the usual, as if the ground were empty inside, alive. I had dug hundreds of graves before. I knew the sound of every type of soil. But that one was strange. I finished the job with trembling hands. When the funeral procession arrived, I could tell it wasn't a normal burial. Many people had come, but no one got close. They stood far away, as if afraid to approach the coffin. Some murmured prayers. Others just watched with heavy, almost accusatory eyes. Family? None. Margaret had no one. When we lowered the coffin, the wind blew so cold that it ran down my spine. The cemetery watchman made the sign of the cross, and I felt like doing the same. But my hands didn't obey. I threw the first shovel of dirt, and the sound got even stranger. A deep noise, like the earth falling into a bottomless hole. With every shovel, the sensation worsened. It felt like something inside the grave was waiting. When I finished, the sky went completely dark. I looked up, and I swear, for a second, it looked like the sun had vanished. At the end of the day, I closed the gate as I always did. And in that exact moment, I heard it, a whisper, low, weak, but unmistakable, coming from the direction where Margaret had been buried. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't my mind. It was a whisper, a dragging voice, almost formless, but seeming to shape syllables. My body froze. I turned slowly, trying to see if someone was inside. Nothing. No sound. Only the echo of that whisper, still vibrating in the back of my head. I left quickly, trying not to look back. On the way home, the feeling grew worse. The air felt stuck to my skin. The quiet streets felt threatening. And as absurd as it sounds, I felt a gaze press against my neck, following my steps. I got home breathless, closed the door, and leaned my back against it, trying to convince myself it was just exhaustion. But that night, that cursed night, the whisper returned. At first, it felt like my mind was replaying what I heard. But the more I ignored it, the stronger it got. I turned in bed, listened to mattress creak, the wind hitting the window, and every sound felt like her voice approaching. Around 3 a.m, I woke with a horrible certainty. Someone was watching me from inside the room. I didn't see anything, but I felt weight, a presence, like something stood near the door. The silence was so deep, I could hear my own broken breathing. I stayed awake until sunrise, sitting, waiting for daylight like it was my only salvation. When morning came, I went to the cemetery trying to pretend everything was normal. But as soon as I entered, I realized the place was different, empty in a strange way, as if the wind avoided passing through. Even the birds were silent. Near her grave, my skin prickled. The soil was still damp, but worse. There were marks, nail marks carved into the edge of the grave. Long, deep, uneven scratches, like someone had tried to claw their way out. I swallowed hard. My hands shook. I grabbed the hoe to fix the dirt and erase the marks, but my legs wouldn't move. I went back to the storage shed, trying not to panic. The day dragged on, every minute crawling. And every time I approached that side of the cemetery, the air grew heavier, almost solid. That night, when I closed the gates, I heard it again, the whispers, but clearer, closer, not meaningless murmurs. A voice forming words. A hoarse, dragging voice, tired, like it came from the bottom of a well. And then for the first time I heard my name. William. My blood turned to ice. My flashlight almost fell. And in that instant I knew, with every bone, every muscle, every inch of my body, that it wasn't my imagination. I locked everything fast, using 2 chains, left almost running, stumbling, my heart out of rhythm, breath shallow. The feeling of being followed stayed with me all the way home. With every step, I felt her shadow behind me, floating, waiting for me to turn around. That night, I knew my life would never be the same. After that night, the first time I heard my name come from a voice that shouldn't exist, I knew something had been awakened in the Maplewood Cemetery. Worse, something had attached itself to me. In the days that followed, my routine became a kind of silent survival. I woke up, drank my weak coffee in my house in Cedar Grove, on the outskirts of Springfield, Ohio, and walked to the cemetery trying to convince myself it was all fatigue, age, or a nightmare too vivid. But every step toward the iron gate told the truth. Things inside weren't normal again. On the 3rd day after Margaret Doyle's burial, her legal name, though no one used it, I realized something worse had happened. As soon as I stepped inside, the hot August air suddenly turned cold, as if I had entered another climate, another season. The ground was damp, a low fog hung, and the trees too quiet. I went straight to the west side, where her grave was, and when I got there, my legs almost failed. The earth had sunk, not much, just a few centimeters, but the kind of sinking that doesn't happen 3 days after a burial. And there was more. The scratch marks I had seen the day before were worse. Much worse. Now they were deep gouges, as if desperate fingers had torn at the soil all night. I swallowed hard. My stomach churned. I crouched, touched the dirt at my fingertips, and felt warmth. The soil wasn't cold as it should be. It was warm, as if something down there was alive. At the exact moment I realized that, I heard steps behind me, fast, light, as if someone walked barefoot on the grass. I turned instantly. No one. The wind blew, and I swear I heard again, this time not a whisper, but a longer, almost mournful sound. Janaden, my name, said in that dragging, dying way, the way only someone without air would speak. My heart raced. My flashlight hit my leg, and I finally understood this wouldn't stop, not while she was there. I ran to the shed, locked the door, leaned on the old sink, trying to breathe while the wind beat against the windows. Then something happened that truly froze my blood. The lights flickered, and between the flickers, I heard knocks, dry, rhythmic, firm, as if someone knocked on the shed door. Talk, talk, talk. Holding my breath, I approached the door. The handle trembled. Once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. I stood there frozen until nearly 8 a.m. The rest of the day, I avoided that side. I could barely work. Every shadow looked too long. Every branch cracking sounded like footsteps behind me. That night, the 3rd since the burial, things got worse. Nearly 11, I went to close the gates. The street was empty, humid air heavy, insects buzzing. But inside the cemetery, there was absolute silence. Before pulling the chains shut, I heard it again. Not a whisper, not a voice, but laughter, low, wet, like someone laughing with a mouth full of dirt. It came from the back, exactly where a grave was. Then a phrase, clear, sharp, burned into my soul. It isn't over, Jonathan. I stumbled away, nearly running, heart pounding like a trapped drum. The feeling of being followed was so strong my back tingled, and when I got home, I shut the door fast. But something told me, with a cold certainty that cut like a knife, that even inside, even locked in, even with the lights on, she had come with me. That night, when I shut the door of my house in Cedar Grove, I noticed immediately that something was wrong. The living room light, which I had left on, was now off, not flickering, not dim, off, and the air inside the house was heavy, hotter than usual, as if someone had been there all day breathing hard in that small space. I dropped my keys on the table and stood still, listening. Absolute silence, almost sickening. Then something chilled me. The wall clock, which always made an annoying ticking sound, had stopped. 3:17. The same time I first felt her presence in my room 3 nights ago. I exhaled slowly, closed the window, locked the back door. But it felt useless, like I was trying to lock out something already inside. Around 11 p.m., I went to the bedroom. The house was warm, suffocating, and a faint haze seemed to form in the hallway, like heat and heavy air mixing in some unnatural way. I sat on the bed, but my body rejected rest. Every muscle trembled. Every breath felt short. Then it happened. A sound from the kitchen. Clack, like someone opened a cabinet. I froze. Another sound. Clack. Harder, like the cabinet was slammed shut. I stood slowly, hard in my throat. The hallway was dark except for a strip of streetlight coming through the window. Step by step, I moved. The floor creaked warnings. At the kitchen doorway, I felt the air shift. Cold, cutting, that same cold from Margaret Doyle's burial. The second I touched the doorframe, the cabinet slammed by itself. Bam! I stumbled back, the shock, slicing the air. But the worst wasn't that. It was the voice. Low, dragging, coming from the dark corner of the kitchen, pushed through a throat full of earth. Jonathan, my blood stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. The voice grew closer, crawling toward me. You open the way. My entire body shook. I couldn't breathe right. My hand dripped sweat. Then the streetlight flickered, plunging the kitchen into total darkness. And in that darkness, I heard something that made me want to run, but my legs refused. Footsteps, slow, wet, as if someone walked with mud-covered feet, coming toward me. I couldn't see anything. The darkness felt solid. Then she breathed on my neck, a cold, grave chill breath. The voice whispered, less than an inch from my ear, "I'm not finished with you." I screamed, fell backward into the hallway. The light flipped back on. The kitchen was empty. No open doors. No moved cabinets. No marks on the floor. But the smell of wet dirt and rotten wood was still there, still clinging to me. And from that night on, I understood what she wanted. Margaret Doyle wasn't trapped in the cemetery. She wasn't trapped anywhere. She was with me. And now she could enter wherever she wanted.